and welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. With me, my co-host and parenting expert, Alyson Schafer. And we're talking about COVID-19. That's what everybody is talking about right now. It's the conversation on everybody's mind. It's the thoughts in everybody's heart. And certainly with the Parenting Show, we want to really try to connect with viewers at home and let them know that they're not alone. Alyson, how are you?
Oh, Jen, I'd be a lot better if we were together in studio, but what a privilege to be able to use technology to reach out to families at this important time.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's, we've gone through this. We've already done a special edition of the Parenting Show on COVID-19. And just like watching TV every day, the news changes daily, hourly, and we're finding out new information, new resources, new aids. And so it's nice to be back with you, even though it is via technology. Yes, to be able to connect with you and really talk to parents.
Well, I think it's important for people to know that while we're being called to physically distance from one another, the most important thing that we've been doing is to be emotionally connecting with people. And I'm hearing all kinds of really beautiful reports of how people are making regular phone calls to their family, how they're using technology to play board games and card games with people remotely. There's been a real outpouring, actually, of people paying attention to the need to check in and connect and have that emotional piece of connection, which is the part that's really foundational to our mental health, and most especially when we're in trying times like a pandemic.
Well, I agree. And, with two kids who don't live at home with us, it's nice to be able to use technology and connect with them. And, even one of the calls we had last week, I said to everybody, what's the first thing you're going to do when you're able to leave and do whatever you want? And the answers were very varied, but they were all about simplicity. It was like giving a hug to somebody. It was, just the simple things in life. It wasn't doing anything extravagant or, it was just living. So I think people are really getting this sense of going back to basics and discovering family time.
Yeah.
Which is music to your ears.
Yeah. A lot of the requirements of the pandemic has forced our hands on a lot of things that were distracting us from some healthy living anyways, that we were overscheduled, that we were too busy to do deeper connection, that we didn't have as much slow time with the most important people in our lives. Having said that, I'm also very aware that when you add this kind of a stressor to family life, for those people that are not functioning well, this can be a tipping point. And that we know that when we look at other crises that have happened and just looking at the statistics, that the most likely person to harm a child is also their families. And so if somebody is not coping well, and if they've lost their job and income is an issue, and there's addiction and drinking in the family, there's increased likelihood of domestic violence and child abuse and some of these things that we don't like to talk about. But, when we honor the idea that it takes a village, a lot of kids spend time with coaches and grandparents, and they go to school and they have a teacher, and that can be a buffering effect from some toxic environments in families. And so without being able to venture out to those other people, there's some kids that are in some pretty critical places right now. And so I always want to be optimistic and hopeful, but I also want to be a realist about some of the true conditions that social isolation is causing, and we need to be mindful of it.
You've been doing an amazing job of really reaching out via social media to all of your viewers and talking to people on a daily basis, answering questions, going through different topics. And I know you reached out and asked some of our viewers for questions relating to the pandemic and how families can be adjusting. I have some of those here for you. Why don't we go through them, because they really are those topics that you're talking about. It's some of the, isolation. It's what do I do in the future? What am I, dealing with the anxiety and the unknown, and trying to be everything for a child who also doesn't know the answers.
Right.
So we have a question here, first and foremost about mental health. I've never had a mental health issue before, but the magnitude of all of this is making me feel like I want to just break down. I know I have to be strong for my kids, and I don't want to be a burden to others, but how do you know if you are really needing help, or am I just as distraught as the next person? Thank you for the question. And Alyson, maybe you can help.
Sure. The first thing I would say is, this is creating a mental stressor for everyone. And different people are going to have different styles of coping, and different people have different challenges. So do not compare your journey or your voyage to anybody else. One person might be saying, well, how can I complain about what's on my plate? I only have one kid. My friend's got 3 and she seems to be doing fine. I shouldn't moan and complain. But it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It's about how you're feeling. And that all of us can feel better if we reach out and let people know that we need some support. And we've seen that even just recently, the Ontario government, I think just yesterday even, I think they released $12 million or so in support. I think the different provinces, you can look and see whether or not mental health funding is going to be on their agenda, because they do know that everybody needs some help. And you don't need to meet some criteria, some diagnosis, to get rid of the feeling of guilt that we need to save those resources for other people. They're for everyone, that we all feel better when we talk to someone, when we vent our concerns, when we feel heard. Don't feel that this is just for the critical and the crippled. This is for all of us to reach out. And so we've been working hard to remove the stigma of mental health issues. I think that also just eliminating the stigma of just simply asking for help that's in the mental domain. It does not need to, don't get caught up on the word illness. Don't get caught up on the word diagnoses. If you feel that you would benefit from speaking to somebody, reach out. And we've put up a bunch of resources for Ontario up in the Keys for people to reach out. I know that Connects Ontario will refer people. And again, a lot of these are free services because they appreciate the fact that there's also an economic instability happening now. People are less likely to want to pay privately. And so these are free resources. They want people to use them. There's resources specifically for kids. I've been an ambassador for Kids Help Phone for years, and they have a texting capability. So if kids are let your kids know. Yes, you can talk to me if things are getting too much for you, but please reach out to some other people too. Maybe you want to talk about being cooped up with me. So make those resources available to our kids, and normalize that speaking to somebody else, speaking to a professional who's trained, can make us all feel better. And right now with the pandemic, the need for us to keep it together and keep our relationship strong and do something called social cohesion is probably the most important focus for us to get through this social disaster, for lack of a better word. I mean, we've been through the Great Depression, and we've been through, there's a lot of people have been comparing this to the disturbances of Katrina and the after effects to families after Hurricane Katrina. We're having our own version of a disaster, and holding ourselves together is job one. And as leaders of the family, parental mental health is that much more important. So please take advantage of it. That's really what they want us to be doing right now.
And I know that holding it together often leads to that breakdown, later in the evening. If you're spending the day being strong, just okay and strong for everybody else, there is that moment where you just...
I was talking to some other moms about that, and some of them really just we cry in the shower. When the kids can't hear it because the water is running nice and loud, and we just release those tears, and it feels good, and we should. And in fact, when you're holding that much emotion inside, sometimes it's helpful to actually give yourself a set time where you say, you know what, I'm going to go shed some tears between 7 and 7:30 while the kids are busy doing something, and go make an appointment to go have a cry in your pillow, and that is okay. And believe it or not, if you get yourself in the right mindset for that 15 minutes, just like having a nap, you can literally have a cathartic cry and release some of that, and that's healthy.
All right, keeping with the anxiety and the emotions, another question. My fuse is getting shorter every week. I know I am yelling at my kids too much. How do I manage everyone being so emotional and hot-tempered when I can't even go cool myself down? I used to check out and have a glass of wine with one of my girlfriends, but guess that's not happening for a while.
Yeah.
Wine on your own, maybe.
Yeah, well, you'll see a lot of people are having these virtual cocktail hours, which I think is really sweet and cute. But I would also say, just in the context of that whole question to me, we do need to be mindful that it's so easy to just grab for a bottle to ease our, bring down our stress. And that can lead to an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, that we really need to think about it as how do we get agency and control over our emotional regulation? And just the same way that we want our kids to not have tantrums when they don't get their way, we have to figure out how to handle when we have a short fuse and when we're getting frustrated. And easy workarounds might be a good little quick fix, but I think we'd all agree in the long run that we're not really getting to the root of the problem. So again, is this the best time in the middle of a crisis to start developing all these lifelong habits? Well, it may push you to start, but you're probably wishing you already had them. So let's go over a couple of quick things that we probably already know. We all know that what flies out of your mouth in the moment of heat probably is going to be something you're going to regret later. So if you can even just catch yourself when you feel like you're about to yell, and to identify, this is me being reactive, not responsive. It might feel good in the short term, but I'm probably not helping the situation. Can we at least just catch that moment and instead of the yell, just say, nothing good is going to come out of my mouth right now. I need to go excuse myself. And I know you can't leave the house like you used to, but could you go to your bedroom? Could you go to another part of the room and take that moment to do your 10 deep breaths? And 10 deep breaths not only buys you some time, truly breathing resets the nervous system. There's a vagus nerve, there's all kinds of science behind it, but you really are literally like taking the main fuse box and throwing the main switch and it's like reboot the computer. You're doing a reset, 10 deep breaths. And so hopefully after that amount of time, you're also modeling to your kids, hey, you know what, when things get really tense, we don't need to go to the next level. And the sooner you can catch it, if you've got kids that are also yelly in your family and people that are also losing it because we're in this pressure keg, you can draw that little thermometer and just kind of put the scale on a thermometer and just kind of say, look at, once we get to a 7 out of 10, all of us need to recognize that we're beyond being good with our problem solving, good with our thinking, good with our mouths. And let's just make an agreement. When it's 7 out of 10, we all just say adios and take a break. And if you can do that as a collective, as a family, less likely to
for a lot of people, it varies what they're going through, and it really depends on the age of the kids. So you have a lot of people who are maybe working from home or who are self-isolating with their family, and their family has very young kids. That's very different than teenagers, and dealing with teenagers who are used to being very social, used to coming and going, and now are going through the same self-isolation as you. We do have a question for you from somebody who has a 14-year-old daughter who says that she is totally fine with social distancing. She hangs out all day in her room texting her friends. I want to respect her right to privacy and time with friends, but isn't there some amount of time I can make her spend time with the family? She even refuses to watch a movie with us. So I think a lot of parents of teenagers are going through this right now.
Developmentally, teens are supposed to want to have time apart from their parents and to do things independently. And the problem is, before they used to be able to go do that in the halls of their high school or off at the mall or hanging at the park, and they don't have that now. So we're finding that the farthest they can get from their parents is their bedroom or the basement, and they're hauling up there for a while. So I'm okay with that. And I'm also okay with a little bit more time on social media, because that is the only way they're connecting with their friends. So proportionally, compared to when they were at school and doing things in real life, it's probably going to be about the same, so I'm all right with that too. But like anything else, what we want to have a conversation is, this is going to go on for a while. This is no longer just the world's weirdest March break. This is now probably going to be with us for months, and we need a new normal, and we miss you. we actually saw you more before the pandemic. You used to show up for dinner. We need to make a new normal. And a new normal is that we want to honor both your right to be alone and do things independently, but you're still a family member and we still got to want to see you and keep our relationship close. And we miss you when we're not with you. And what are some ways that we could, what would be a reasonable amount of time that we could all agree to for family connection time? And inviting the teen into the conversation rather than mandating is really important. And giving any kind of flexibility is helpful to a teen. So if you say something like, well, would it be fair to expect 3 out of 4 nights of the week that we could spend a couple hours in the evening together? And then saying, well, what nights would be good for you? And a little bit of say into how we're going to spend that time. And so, yeah, maybe they do or don't like movies depending on the ages of their siblings. Maybe they've watched Harry Potter 15 times and that's the family movie and they're not all that interested. So maybe we ask for a little input on, could they pick something that was age appropriate for their younger siblings, but is something they'd still be interested in watching. So all that idea of having voice, having a say, having flexibility, coming up with agreements around that is going to go a lot farther with the teen than saying, what you're doing is unacceptable. I've got a better way of doing family life and I'm going to impose my ideas on you. Unlikely to work.
Right. Well, I almost think, and I'm aging myself here, but when I was 14, I went from moving from Nova Scotia to Ontario, and I wrote letters to my friends that I wanted to talk to, and I could talk to them on Sundays because Sunday was cheaper, or after 6, it was cheaper to call long distance than anything else. Kids these days, that's the phrase that makes me sound older. Kids these days have grown up on technology. So while this whole social distancing is very strange to kids, the technology part is not. The non-face-to-face interacting over a phone is very much in their comfort zone for a lot of them.
In fact, I've heard that kids are feeling that teens are feeling a lot more grounded because they're having less FOMO, because there aren't people going out to the Saturday house party and they didn't get invited. There aren't people going to the movies and you got cut out of the group that was going. So I've heard the FOMO is down, and also the increased contact with their parents. And they say, well, I wouldn't normally just talk to my parent about this, but they were making a coffee, so I just started a conversation. It was kind of nice. So I think the teens are actually having an opportunity to benefit from that. I think they're very nervous about what's going on with their education and what's going to happen in terms of getting into colleges and universities, and people that didn't get to say goodbye to proms. There's some grief happening, but I think we just need to honor that grief is a process and that their problems are big problems in their world, and we need to validate that.
Well, and I like what you're saying, because we are taping this show on April 7th. So it does change daily. And, just a few weeks ago, we thought the kids were returning yesterday on the 6th. And now it's potentially the end of the month, or it's in September, or, everything changes on a daily basis. And the same, when you're talking about prom and graduation and all of those things, there's a lot of outfits that are hanging in closets, and so that anxiety of not knowing becomes a bit of an issue.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful for them to know that it's not just them, it's not just their school, it's the whole province, it's the whole country, it's the whole world. Everyone is going to figure out how to advance kids, and kids are being incredibly creative with ways that they are making up for missed experiences, and I think that's been really beautiful. Yeah.
You mentioned grief, and this is a very heavy question. Is there anything I can do to prepare my kids for death and grieving in advance? My parents are elderly and unwell. If they get the virus, they won't survive it. My kids are really close to their grandparents. Is there anything I should be doing now?
So I think that we have to know that death can't be a taboo subject. Just like talking about sex, it's a difficult subject, but it doesn't mean that we protect and hide our kids from it. We need to start having some of these conversations, and we can do it in delicate ways. Certainly with our youngest kids, I think we're going to have to start making sure that they don't see some of the visual images, because there's going to be death on such a large scale that it's not going to look like one person dying and you go to a funeral home. It's going to be a very different version than we've seen in the past. And I think some of the images are going to be graphic. So I would be very conscious of our little people not seeing those images. I think there's lots of books that, for, again, the younger kids, that are just like, Franklin loses his puppy or whatever. Like there's conversations about sadness and loss that we can just be having around themes in a book. But as our kids, we want to make sure that we do share with them information in a factual way. So, but we also want to curtail misunderstandings. So we might say, just because you're older people are more at risk, but grandma and grandpa are, and doing all the positive things. And there's lots of people that are being tested and looking out for them. And that we don't know, nobody knows the future. So this is why we're being smart and safe. And then of course, if they do end up contracting the disease, again, we want to say, and they're in the best place and people are looking after them and they've got care around them. And we don't know, some people get better. I don't want them to associate that everybody who's old is going to die, because again, that's one of those misunderstandings. And of course, if there is finally death for younger kids, they often have not really understood that people that they love can go from their lives, and they're going to need a lot of reassurance that you're safe, that mom and dad aren't going to go, that this isn't, we need to contain their worry. Again, going back to honest facts and instilling confidence in all of the actions that we're taking to make things safe for them. And knowing that different kids also grieve in very different ways, that how they process it at 6, they who knows how some kids get sad and some kids get distracted, some kids get angry. And even 2 years down the road at 8, 2 years from now in 2022, they might circle back and grieve in a different way because they're developmentally at a different place. So it's a long arc. And again, and same with older kids, that we want our house to be a place where we can have open conversations, where we can help them make sense of their feelings and give names and labels to their feelings, and make this an ongoing conversation, saying along the way that, it's sad and we do miss people, and that it is a process and there's no right or wrong way to feel, and that it's helpful to remember the good things and to tell stories rather than can't sweep death into a closet,
Right. I'm going to squeeze one more question in for you. I'm already worried about how life is going to go back to normal. I've made so many exceptions to the regular family rules just to survive these times that I don't know how I'm ever going to get my kids to go back to more strict regimes. You love regime. You love that word. Who wants less screen time and less snacking and early bedtimes? This is going to be brutal. So if let's pull out a crystal ball and say that this is, we are flattening the curve. We are getting closer to getting back to whatever normal will be. How do parents get back into a different routine?
Yeah, which I hope they look forward to. But it's true, because I'm giving parents the advice. The bar is very low right now. This is not the time to worry about whether or not your white sheets are as white, as bright as whatever, we don't need to juggle all the balls perfectly here. Put some balls down. That is okay. So I'm sure parents are looking around going, I'll do this for a while, but come on. So this is why, Jen, and we've talked about this so many times across the different episodes, talk about a good application of family meetings. Family meetings are where we sit down as a family and we decide how the rules of the family and how we're going to be together, what's expected of people. And it's the place where we establish baseline operating for the family. And so right now you're baseline operating in hectic times, and it's looking really different than other times. The whole point is, if you do family meetings, and I like to suggest doing them weekly, it sets up the idea that everything is iterative. Our news is different. 3 and 4-year-olds should have different rules than 5 and 6-year-olds. Of course, we're going to circle back and create new arrangements for the family as the need may be. And if you meet once a week to talk about family business, It means that you can say, hey, I know last week and for the last 2 months, we have been letting people stay up late and we've been letting people help themselves to the fridge. But you know what? Things are coming back to normal. Parents are starting to go back out to work. In another couple of weeks, you're going to be back in the classroom or whatever it might be. We need to start coming up with a new normal for that situation. And so I think if you've got these family meetings and you treat it like a business decision, it's very different than just being at the dishwasher and the kids pulling on your pant leg and you're like, no, new rule. We're going to stop that snack thing we were doing before. That just feels very arbitrary, very unpredictable. Feels like things are too fluid. Once a week, set your rules, and the rules should exist, for until you have the next meeting. And I suggest the next meeting be about every 7 days.
Right. Does it become a little bit sooner now that everybody is together on a daily basis?
Sooner meaning, should we have them more frequently?
I know you normally say once a week, but
Well, the once a week is, kids can tend to live with a rule they don't like for about 7 days. That's why I come up with the once a week. But to your point, when people are really busy and there's more things to put on the agenda, you might want to hold it more frequently, and that's fine, so long as you give kids an anticipated amount of time that you're going to have it. Again, being respectful, saying we're going to have another family meeting on Wednesday, like schedule the next one as needed. A lot of people just only have family meetings when things start falling apart and a parent gets upset. They're like, we need to call a family meeting. It's not about you stepping into a position of dictatorship because you're all upset and like starting to throw down some new rules. It's like at your workplace when you have a meeting. It's you come together as need be, and if you're in the workplace and you're in a crisis situation, all hands on deck meetings are probably going to happen more frequently. So if you need that in your home, that's okay too.
We have about a minute left. Talk to me about where people can find your resources, because I did mention you're on social media. And your website is also a great, valuable resources.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm cranking out content as much as I can across a bunch of different platforms. One is I'm just launching a podcast. So you can find that up on iTunes. You can find, if you go to my website at AlysonSchafer.com, of course, it's got all the links to everywhere else I reside. But once a day, I am posting on Instagram TV, the sort of parent survival tip of the day. So you can look for me on Instagram there. I've been doing regular Facebook Lives, again, just making a forum to answer questions like we're answering here. So follow me on my Facebook page. I have one specifically for teens with a different issue. So I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Alyson.
All the best.
Yes, I know. It'll be nice to be with you in the studio again soon. Thank you, everybody at home, for watching. We'll see you next time on The Parenting Show.